It starts with one topic that quietly turned into one of the biggest conversations inside the building: A.J. Brown and the direction of the Eagles' offense moving forward. After the season ended in frustration, after the loss that still sits heavy with fans, A.J. Brown went quiet. No media after the loss, no locker room comments, no explanations. The only thing people saw was him signing jerseys for Quinion Mitchell and Cooper DeJean to recognize their all-pro seasons. For a while, that silence created noise. Fans started asking if A.J. was unhappy, if the relationship with Jalen Hurts was broken, if Philadelphia was no longer home for him. Then Super Bowl week changed the tone. With media everywhere and players moving from show to show, A.J. finally spoke publicly again, and what came out matters for where this team is going. On Micah Parsons' podcast, A.J. Brown didn't sound frustrated. He didn't sound disconnected. He sounded calm, focused, and mentally in a better place than we've seen in a while. His words were simple but important. Philadelphia is home. Not business, not temporary, not complicated. Home. That alone removes a lot of the panic that started to surround his future with the Eagles. He also talked about the changes coming to the offense, and specifically the hiring of Sean Mannion as offensive coordinator. A.J. made it clear that he welcomes change. He understands that the offense stalled, that things became predictable, and that frustration built up inside the locker room. He showed respect for Kevin Patullo as a coach, but the reality inside the building was that Patullo wasn't cut out to run the entire offense. Players respected him, but they didn't believe the system was maximizing what they could do. That tension showed up on the field, and everyone felt it. Now, with Mannion stepping in, A.J. sees opportunity instead of disruption. Around the league, people view Mannion as a coach with a real vision, even if he's inexperienced as a play caller. He comes from a background influenced by the McVay and Shanahan style of offense, which means more structure, more rhythm, more defined reads for Jalen Hurts, and more chances for receivers like A.J. Brown to win in space instead of always fighting through broken plays, and that leads directly to Jalen Hurts. Another important part of this story is where Jalen is mentally right now. During Pro Bowl week, people around him noticed something different. He wasn't carrying the season on his shoulders anymore. He looked reset. Reporters who spoke with him described him as being in the best mental space he's been in for a long time. That matters because when both your quarterback and your star receiver are aligned mentally, the offense has a chance to stabilize instead of fracture. If A.J. and Jalen were truly unhappy with each other, you would feel it by now. You would hear trade buzz turning into real conversations. You would see Howie Roseman talking with teams behind the scenes while everyone is together at Super Bowl week. But according to what's happening inside the league, there haven't been real trade talks involving A.J. Brown. Only brief early conversations around the league, nothing aggressive, nothing serious. If the Eagles truly planned to move him, that process would already be loud. Instead, what's happening is more about recalibration than explosion. A.J. Brown isn't running from Philadelphia. He's leaning into what the offense could become. He's excited about being challenged again, and that fits with what people around the NFL are saying about Mannion. He's going to challenge Jalen Hurts, challenge the structure of the offense, and force growth instead of comfort. That doesn't mean it will be perfect immediately. A new system takes time. Terminology changes, timing changes, reads change, the way Jalen operates changes. But the key point is that the Eagles aren't trying to patch last season's problems. They're trying to reset how the offense thinks, moves, and attacks defenses. For A.J. Brown, that reset could be huge. Instead of living on isolation routes and broken plays, he could become part of a more layered, intentional passing game. That's how elite receivers stay elite longer in the NFL. And from everything coming out of Super Bowl week, A.J. isn't planning his exit. He's preparing for his next chapter in Philadelphia. So now the real question for the fan base isn't, will A.J. Brown get traded? It's, can this new offensive direction unlock the version of the Eagles we've been waiting to see again? What do you honestly think about A.J. Brown's mindset and the offensive changes heading into this new era for Philadelphia? What makes this shift even more interesting is that it isn't only about A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts. The entire offensive structure is being reshaped, and that includes the people who have defined Eagles football for more than a decade.
Jeff Stoutland stepping away after 13 years is one of the biggest signals that this isn't cosmetic change, it's foundational change. Stoutland wasn't just an offensive line coach, he was a culture piece. He developed Jordan Mailata from almost nothing, helped turn Lane Johnson into a Hall of Fame-level tackle, and built an identity where the Eagles bullied teams up front. Losing him is emotional for fans, but strategically, it connects directly to what Sean Mannion wants to install. Mannion's background is tied to a different run game philosophy. It's less about pure power and more about timing, angles, and sequencing. The McVay-Shanahan influence isn't just window dressing. It changes how linemen move, how backs press holes, and how the quarterback plays off play action. That's why the Eagles wanted a run game coordinator aligned with that vision instead of forcing the old system to survive inside a new offense. From the outside, it feels uncomfortable. Inside the building, it's about coherence, one voice, one direction, and that also ties into the questions on the offensive line itself. Cam Jurgens didn't have the season the team expected, partly because of injuries. Landon Dickerson's body has always been a concern going back to college, and that hasn't magically disappeared in the NFL. Lane Johnson is still elite, but age and health always creep into the conversation when you're in your mid-30s playing the most violent position on the field. The Eagles aren't just changing scheme for fun. They're preparing for the reality that the offensive line will not look the same forever, and the system has to protect the quarterback and the skilled players in smarter ways, not just tougher ones. That's where Jalen Hurts becomes the centerpiece of everything. Greg Cosell pointed out something important. On paper, you wouldn't immediately think Jalen is a perfect fit for a Shanahan-style offense. His strengths have always been power, deep throws, and off-script plays. This system asks for rhythm, timing, discipline, and consistency. It's a mental transition as much as a physical one. But the Eagles would never hire Mannion if they didn't believe Jalen could grow into it. They aren't building an offense to hide their quarterback. They're building one to evolve him. There will be a learning curve, new terminology, new teaching style, new expectations. Jalen has to be open to it, and sometimes his personality can be stubborn, but he's also a veteran, and veterans understand when a reset is necessary. The reports coming out of the offseason suggest he's not fighting change. He's leaning into it. Now flip that back to A.J. Brown. His frustration last season wasn't about effort. It wasn't about money. It was about flow. When an offense stalls, receivers feel isolated. They run great routes that never get used. They win and don't get rewarded. That frustration doesn't mean a player hates the city. It means he hates wasted potential. With Mannion, the Eagles are trying to build a structure where A.J. isn't just surviving plays. He's featured inside them. Around the league, people are already speaking highly of Mannion as a teacher and planner, even if he hasn't yet proven himself as a long-term play caller. That's why this move is a projection. The Eagles didn't hire him for what he was. They hired him for what they believe he can become. That tells you the organization isn't chasing comfort anymore. They're chasing upside. And while the offense grabs headlines, the defense quietly stabilized too. Vic Fangio seriously considered retiring. After a long, exhausting season, it was on the table. The Eagles even had contingency plans in case he walked away. But after conversations inside the building, Fangio decided to come back. That matters more than people realize. Fangio isn't just a coordinator. He's an identity builder. His presence means the Eagles won't be reinventing both sides of the ball at once. The defense stays anchored while the offense learns to breathe again. So when you zoom out, this isn't about one trade rumor, one podcast clip, or one coordinator hire. It's about a franchise acknowledging that last season didn't end the way it should have. And instead of pretending it was bad luck, they chose disruption. They chose challenge. They chose to make Jalen uncomfortable in a productive way, to give A.J. Brown structure instead of chaos, and to realign the offense with where the modern NFL is actually going. A.J. Brown saying Philadelphia is home isn't just emotional. It's strategic. It tells you the leaders in that locker room aren't looking for exits. They're looking for solutions. And solutions only work when the quarterback, the coordinator, and the star receiver are pulling in the same direction. Now the next chapter is execution. Talk is cheap in February. Systems only matter in September. But for the first time in a while, the Eagles aren't just patching problems. They're redesigning the offense around growth instead of nostalgia. If you're an Eagles fan, this offseason isn't about fear. It's about patience and belief in development. And that's what makes this moment interesting instead of depressing. And even after all of that, there's another layer to this story that fans can't ignore because it connects everything together: identity. For years, the Eagles' offense had a clear personality: physical up front, explosive on the outside, and dangerous when Jalen Hurts broke the pocket. That formula took them to a Super Bowl and made defenses fear Philadelphia. But over time, defenses adjusted, tendencies became obvious, and what once felt dominant started to feel forced. You could see it in the body language on the field. Plays looked harder than they needed to be. Drives stalled not because of talent, but because of predictability. That's why this offseason feels different. The Eagles aren't just swapping coaches, they're questioning who they are offensively. With Sean Mannion, the goal is no longer to rely on hero plays. It's to create answers before the snap, not after it breaks down. That's a philosophical shift. Instead of asking Jalen Hurts to constantly save plays, the system is supposed to help him stay on schedule, control the tempo, and keep the offense ahead of the chains. For A.J. Brown, that could change everything. Last season, there were stretches where he was still productive, but you could tell the offense wasn't consistently feeding him within rhythm. Too many late reads, too many broken structures, too many plays where he won early but the ball came late or not at all. Elite receivers thrive when they know when the ball is coming, not just if it's coming. A system with better spacing, sequencing, and timing lets A.J. attack defenders instead of fighting the design of the play itself. It also helps the other weapons. DeVonta Smith benefits when coverage is stressed horizontally, not just vertically. Dallas Goedert becomes more dangerous when play action actually threatens linebackers instead of just pretending to. Even the run game gets cleaner when defenses have to respect the entire structure instead of loading the box and daring the Eagles to beat them the hard way. And that's why the offensive line discussion matters so much. The Eagles are aware they're in a transitional period up front. Cam Jurgens battling injuries, Landon Dickerson's long-term durability, and Lane Johnson's age all create a situation where brute force alone isn't enough anymore. The new offense is designed to protect the line as much as the line protects the quarterback. Quicker decisions, better angles, smarter movement. It's about efficiency, not just dominance. Jalen Hurts sits at the center of all of this. The biggest challenge for him isn't physical, it's mental. He has to trust the structure instead of immediately trusting himself. That sounds simple, but for a quarterback who's built his career on toughness and resilience, letting the system work can be harder than making a play on his own. The Eagles believe that growth is possible. They wouldn't bring in Mannion and overhaul the offense if they thought Jalen was capped as a player. This is an investment in his evolution, not a workaround. What's encouraging is the tone coming out of the building. Jalen isn't defensive. A.J. Brown isn't distant. The locker room leadership isn't fractured. Instead of pointing fingers, they're pointing forward. That doesn't guarantee success, but it does eliminate the kind of internal tension that usually kills teams before September even arrives. Another thing fans should notice is how quiet the Eagles have been about panic moves. There's no desperation, no public threats of change for the sake of headlines, no leaks suggesting the core is broken. That tells you the organization still believes in the nucleus. Hurts, Brown, Smith, Goedert, and the backbone of the roster. They're changing how those pieces are used, not whether they belong together. So when you watch this offseason unfold, don't look for fireworks right away. Look for alignment. Look for consistency in language from coaches and players. Look for A.J. Brown talking about opportunity instead of frustration. Look for Jalen Hurts talking about rhythm instead of survival. Those details tell you more about the future of the Eagles' offense than any rumor ever could. Philadelphia isn't rebuilding, it's recalibrating. And recalibration is harder than starting over, because you have to admit what worked, what didn't, and what needs to grow without burning the whole thing down. That's what makes this chapter interesting. The Eagles aren't running from last